Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to another of our live streams for GCSE Economics. And this is going to be the sixth and our final live stream in this batch of live streams that we've been doing over the last few weeks. But don't worry, we will be back. We've got one more special before Christmas, and we'll be back in the new year to give you some more support with your revision. I'm joined tonight by Peter. Good evening, Peter. How are you?
Evening, John. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So Peter and I are here to deliver a sort of 25 minutes or so of fast-paced activities on price stability. Now let's just talk about that title just for a moment or two. So your specifications and economics these days talks about the government objective of price stability. What the government is attempting to do is keep prices relatively stable. We know in the UK that relatively stable means anywhere between 1 and 3%. The target is 2%. So we talk about price stability, but then often what economists talk about as well, of course, is inflation. So inflation is the measure of price rises. The objective is price stability, to keep inflation as stable as it possibly can. So just clearing that one up, because lots and lots of teachers and examiners will talk about inflation, but the title is price stability. Brilliant. Okay, so we've got 25 minutes of activities, as I said. The PowerPoint that Peter and I are using will be available to you to download as soon as this live stream is finished, if you wanted to look through them again. And of course, this is being recorded. Now, I think that we're roughly about 20 to 25 seconds lagging. So you might be watching this in the past or in the future. I don't know how that one quite works. We'll be looking out for your responses in the chat window. We would love to see those responses in the chat window. But if we don't see them immediately, we'll see them a little bit later, and we'll try and give people a little bit of credit as we go along. So it's going to be one of those evenings, I'm afraid. Right, Peter, I think we're ready. Shall we get cracking?
Yeah, let's get started.
Brilliant.
So we're going to start off with some multiple choice questions. A, B, C, or D. This is testing your knowledge and understanding of what's been going on in the recent weeks. So according to statistics released this week, what was the rate of inflation in the UK in October? Was it 2.6%, 4.6%, 6.7%, or 11.3%? Remember, this is compared to this time last year, so we're looking at the rate over a year's time. So compared to this time last year, how much have prices increased by on average? It'd be great to see some answers coming through in the chat window. Really testing your topical knowledge understanding here. There's probably some people furiously typing away. If you're not sure, just have a guess. We might get going soon. Give some shout outs as we go. Abbas, thank you there for B. Let's see if there's any more coming. Quite a few MCQs. That great, guys. 629. I recognise a few of these names. It's wonderful to see some returners. Let's take a look at the answer, John. Wonderful, great stuff. Note this was a fall from September, but bear in mind the prices haven't fallen. It's just the rate of change that's fallen. So compared to this time last year, prices still 4.6% more expensive on average, higher on average. So what's also important to note in that post-it note you can see on screen is this. It's the lowest since 2021. But our target, as John said at the start of the video, is still 2%. Great stuff. Thanks to you two for contributing. Number two, which of these economic agents is likely to benefit from a sustained level of high inflation? So here we're thinking about different impacts of inflation. Is it A, producers if prices rise faster than costs, borrowers if interest rates are rising, workers in low-paid jobs, or those who are retired on fixed incomes? So we're thinking about impacts, and we're thinking about how we can derive those, how to link those impacts to specific economic agents. So who's going to win from high inflation? Might be easiest if you think about the points you can eliminate before you make your decision. Think about the objectives of borrowers if interest rates are rising. Would a borrower win if interest rates are rising? Interesting thought. That great, guys, coming with B. Thanks for the contribution. We'll just see if there's any more that come through. Tricky, this one. Got to really follow through our logical chains of reasoning. Abbas has gone with A. So two contrasting answers. Got a bit of a square off going here. Oh, have we got our minds being changed here by that great guy? Let's take a look. It's producers if prices rise faster than costs. So we know that producers want to maximize profits. We assume that that's their aim. So if the price that they're receiving for the good or service that they are selling goes up at a faster rate than the cost of production, then they're going to win in terms of a higher level of profit. It won't be borrowers if interest rates are rising. It'll be savers if interest rates are rising. Borrowers are going to be hurt by high levels of inflation if interest rates go up, because they're going to have to pay a greater amount back to the financial institutions from which they've borrowed that money. So, as John says, good change of mind. Let's take a look at the next question. Conflict in the Ukraine has led to an increase in energy prices. What type of inflation is this? Is it when supply is restricted? Is it demand pull? Is it monetary expansion? Or is it cost push? We're really testing your understanding of the different types of inflation here, folks. So A, B, C, or D, energy prices. What might they contribute to for businesses? And this might help us to derive the correct answer. A, B, C, or D. It is something you might have heard about in the news quite frequently, this one. Any guesses coming through? Abbas has gone for D. Will that great guy agree with D? Or will we have a difference of opinion? 10 seconds to see if we can see any more answers coming in the chat window. Those who are watching on catch up, I can imagine you're watching with great suspense. Let's take a look, John. It is D, okay? Because energy prices are energy is a core cost of production for businesses. So if costs go up, we're going to see cost push inflation on aggregate in the economy. Interesting note there on screen that the Ukraine conflict has contributed to global food inflation. So because of the war in the Ukraine, we've seen food prices increase quite dramatically over the duration. Okay, question number 4. The UK's current inflation rate is greater than the rates in Germany, France, the USA, and Japan. Which of the following is the most likely outcome if UK prices are persistently rising at a higher rate than those of foreign competitors? So what's going to be the impact if our inflation rate is greater than our foreign competitors? Will it be that banks lend more? That's A. Will it be the UK will purchase less imports? Will savers save less? Or will the UK sell less goods abroad? What do we think? A, B, C, or D? So we're really thinking about different impact this time. It is a tough one. Keep an eye on that chat window. This is probably the most challenging question we've had of the evening. Only one more to go after this. Let's see if any answers come through. Right. I think I'm conscious of time. Let's see what the answer is, John. It is D. We'll sell less goods abroad because ultimately it comes down to the fact that we are less competitive. Abbas has come in with D. Maybe I jumped the gun with that one there, so apologies, Abbas. The answer is D, because our goods are going to be more highly priced than our competitors. We'll call that less price competitive. Some of you who study business might be familiar with that term. So that's why D is the correct answer. We'll sell less goods abroad if our inflation rate is higher. Final MCQ of the evening coming up here. What will happen to inflation if interest rates are increased? Will it stay the same? Will it rise? Will it fall? Or does the answer depend on other factors? Is it A, B, C, or D? 20 seconds to have a ponder with this one. It'd be wonderful to see some answers in the chat window. Thanks for the many contributions that have come through so far. I believe we've got a response through. That could have been off the last time, I'm not so sure. Benefit of the doubt. I think it could be the answer that's come through. Let's just take a look. Some of us aren't on the quickest computers here, that person being me. That great guy's coming with C. We've got YW with C, a Bass with D. Couple of disagreements. Let's take a look. Well, we would expect expect inflation would fall because interest rates are the tool that the Monetary Policy Committee used to control prices, to aim. Think about the title of this session: to aim for price stability and bring inflation back to its target. Of course, there are other tools that we can use, but remember this point for later on in the live stream. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Peter. And I know Abbas came in with D there, and I suppose you could argue clearly other factors will have an impact upon on inflation. But I guess what we're saying with that question, or what the examiner was saying with that question, on the whole, the likelihood is if interest rates are increased, inflation will fall. And yes, other factors could contribute to that. But generally, if interest rates are going up, then we'll see a fall in inflation. I think we'll come back to those figures a little bit later on. Thanks, Peter. Let's move on. Okay, and now just check with your specs before you go about answering this question. Different specs, depending on what you're doing, different specifications, depending on what you're doing, they ask for slightly different things when it comes to calculating how inflation is worked out. So all the specs talk about using the consumer price index measure, So have a look at that. But they all say you need to be aware of how they're calculated. In terms of if they get you to actually make a calculation or not, that depends from one examining board to another. So have a look at this example on screen. What I'm going to do with this first one is I'm going to work through this one, and then what we'll do is I'll set you on in a moment or two. Just one quick question on calculating. Now, a key thing to remember when in this country it's the ONS, the Office for National Statistics, are calculating inflation. What they do is they put together a basket of goods, and that basket of goods contains literally thousands of real world goods, and we've simplified it in this example down to just two. But when they are picking those baskets of goods, they also take the goods and they give them specific weightings, because the things that we purchase, a different proportion of our income might be spent on them. We might buy them more often than not. So there's a very clever calculation going on when inflation is calculated, and we're going to try and simulate that with this little question in a very, very simplistic way. So take a look at the question on screen. Consider the following data table for country Z. In country Z, consumers purchase 6 apples and 3 bananas in any one given period. So we're simplifying things. Basically what we're saying is people in country Z consume twice as many apples as they do bananas. They only consume 2 things. That's how unreal this is. Apples and bananas, 6 in each period of apples, 3 in each period of bananas. We've also got there a little schedule of the pricing. And what we're going to do is calculate the CPI at the end of period 2, assuming that period 1 is what we call the base, the first year in our calculation. Right, so how would we do that? Let's just put on screen then how we would use that table and how we would calculate that. Very, very simplistic numbers, very, very simplistic way of looking at the calculation. So we take the price of each of our goods and then we multiply them by their special weightings, by how often they're purchased in this case. So you can see in time period 1, we're working out the price of our cost of our basket of goods. We multiply by those apples by the number of apples we buy 6 times 5. The same with the bananas, 3 times 2, and we get our overall cost. In time period 2, we do exactly the same thing. We've said that the number of apples and bananas consumed is exactly the same, but obviously we've seen a change in price. Apples have gone up to £8, bananas have gone up to £3. So we make that same calculation again. 6 times 8, 3 times 3. This time our overall basket of goods is worth £57. Then the crucial bit in terms of the calculation, we divide our new figure by the original and multiply it by 100 to find out what has happened in terms of our CPI number. So 57 divided by 36, the new number divided by the original, always go back to the base year as it were. A new number divided by the original multiplied by 100 gives us 158.33. And what we would be saying there is our number has gone up from 100 to 158.33. So prices generally have risen by 58.33. As you know, we worry about inflation in this country being over 2%. So an inflation rate of 58.33 would be really, really awful. There's plenty of examples around the world, though, if you have a look. I was reading about Argentina today, and their level of inflation is very, very high as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do the same. Now, it's a tricky thing to do live, this one, because I know calculations can take a little bit longer. So I'm going to give you a few moments. If you're watching this on replay, of course, this may be a very, very good time to pause the video and spend a bit longer on this calculation. Consider the following data for country W. In country W, consumers purchased 4 loaves of bread and 2 packets of crisps. Again, keeping our conceptually, we're keeping it as simple as we possibly can. Calculate the CPI for period 2, assuming that the time period 1 is the base year again. So exactly the same questions before, different set of data. This time we're saying bread is £2 in time period 1, crisps are £1, bread has gone up to £4 in period 2, and crisps has gone up to £1.50. Now, I'm going to give you a few moments. I've got a sneaky suspicion that one may take people too long to do in terms of the amount of time we've got on this live stream, but I'm going to let people have a go at that whilst we are broadcasting live, just to see if anybody does come up with a number. So remember, we're multiplying our price by our weightings, and our weightings are 4 for loaves, 2 for crisps. So we multiply our price of our bread and our crisps by 4 for bread, 2 for crisps. We do exactly the same in period 2, and that's how we'll have our 2 figures that we'll use for calculating the overall CPI. Just waiting to see if anybody comes back with that one. Calculation ones are always the trickiest thing to do live. Might end up just being a really good example for you to look back on. Don't forget that the PowerPoint we're using will be downloadable as soon as this live stream finishes. Great guy's come in for us, and that great guy. Fantastic name, by the way, because I think you've come back with a spot on answer there. Abbas has come in. Now, Abbas, what you've done is you've told me the CPI figure, which is absolutely, I guess, what the question says. So that is the right answer, what Abbas has come up with. What that great guy's done is told us what the inflation rate is. Marco's come in with an inflation rate as well. Thank you, Marco. Let's have a look on screen. Well done to everybody who had a go at that. That one's a bit of a tricky one to do in that time period. Hopefully you're getting the concept, though, of what we're saying here is we need to multiply our prices by our weightings, get our value of the basket of goods, and then we can make some judgment. Ultimately, our CPI has gone up to 190. So yes, we're saying that our inflation rate in country W again is this horrendous 90%. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll move on, Peter, to the bubble quiz.
Now, that was really well done by those folks, wasn't it? Okay, here's the bubble quiz. Many of you who've joined us before will know what the score is here. If you haven't, the aim is to identify the correct answers on screen. There can be none of them can be correct, or all of them can be correct, or any combination in between. So let's take a look at the first one. What are the main costs of inflation for individuals? Less disposable income and savings, reduced purchasing power and uncertainty. Savers are likely to lose out as interest rates go down, lower investment returns, and higher debts. So we're looking at problems. So whatever you think are those costs, if you can put the corresponding letter in the chat window, that would be wonderful. So we're thinking about this from an individual's point of view. Someone like me. Just wait, 'cause there's a bit of a lag. So Bass has gone A, B, and C. Just wait a couple more seconds, seeing if anyone else is going to join. Really good point by John in the chat window there, that the examiner is really looking at impacts here with this sort of question. You could get this same question not just for individuals but for businesses and for producers as well. Marco's coming with A and C, and that great guy with A and B. So we've got some pretty unanimous thoughts here. A, B, and D is what we're looking for. Now, C was the incorrect one. Savers are likely to lose out as interest rates fall. Interest rates generally rise during periods of inflation. That's sort of a bit of a tricky one that you've got to really think about what the statements are asking you. So, in times of high inflation, we wouldn't have reductions in interest rates. We'd have higher interest rates, which is what the post-it is trying to say. So, A, yeah, that's correct because inflation erodes the purchasing power of your money and how far that money can go if it's been saved at the bank. That links with B in terms of disposable income and purchasing power, and you get lower returns on your investment and higher debts. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. Which of these are measures of inflation that are used in the UK? So there are a few different measurements that we can use in the UK, or several different measurements, we should say. Possible Freudian slip there. Let's take a look at this. So do we think A is an option, B, A, B and C, A, B, C and D? What are our thoughts? There's a comment in the chat window that we'll address towards the end of the session, I think, John. Okay, so Abbas has gone for C, as has Marco. That great guy's going with A and C. Right, let's take a look at our answers. So A, C and D were the correct answers. Now, it could be the case on your specifications, you're familiar with the Consumer Price Index as the main measure. What tends to happen, if you look at that little post-it note we've put on, the CPIH tends to be the figure quoted by the ONS in the UK. That includes owner-occupiers' housing costs, so that inflation gives a more representative example. So we see a more representative example of inflation and how it's impacting people in the UK. But it's your specification wants you to be able to calculate the CPI. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. Which of these measures is aimed at keeping inflation low and stable? So we've got some policy responses here. Which ones could be the options that would enable that to occur? What do we think here? A couple of answers coming in, I think. Think about this one. We might have alluded to one of these a little bit earlier on. How could we keep inflation at our target rate of 2%? Let's take a look at the answer for this one, John. It is increasing interest rates, what we're looking for here. Increasing interest rate makes the price of borrowing more expensive, so it disincentivizes borrowing. I think there might be a little bit of a lag here, because I can see 3 answers coming in. Thank you for those contributions, folks. Gratefully received.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Peter, were you going to mention this little chart as well?
Yes, I think I was, John. So what we're looking at here is just a bit of context for you, really, to support with your exams. We can see that from March 2020, the orange is our inflation rate, and we can see that interest rates were, I think, early 2020, we were at 0.1%. That was when we were trying to stimulate the economy due to the impacts of coronavirus. And then, as we can see, late 2021, interest rates started to go up. Gradually into 2023, we can see the inflation starts to fall. So that's just showing the official bank rate of the Bank of England versus inflation, and how we use interest rates to try to bring inflation down. Thanks, John.
Brilliant stuff. And actually, that takes us very well into our next little activity. So let me pass over onto this one. So Peter was just talking about interest rates there, and we know that interest rates are a huge tool that is used to try and combat the issue of inflation and try and keep prices stable. Now, what's interesting about the UK, as it is in many countries around the world, interest rates are not set by the UK government. They're set independently by the Bank of England. So as a policy for dealing with inflation, for keeping prices stable, yes, it is the single most important one that you would talk about, but it's not actually implemented by the government. So if we have a question that says to you, right, what can the government do about price stability and what about inflation, we have to talk about other policies that the actual government has some sort of say over. Now, interestingly, tomorrow, literally tomorrow, if you're watching this live or watching this on the 21st of November still, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, picture on the screen for us there, will be delivering his autumn statement, a sort of like mid-year review of the economy, and also a statement about a number of policies that he or the government might be taking forward, looking at all sorts of issues. And we know that inflation is still a huge concern, and Jeremy Hunt has actually said, he doesn't want to implement any kind of policies that will lead to an increase in inflation. They're looking at trying to keep things relatively stable on a downward trajectory as they have been. So we're going to talk about in this little activity, what if the government was trying to impact very clearly on inflation, and were thinking about ways that they could do that. Right, so here's our on balance activity. So imagine you're in an exam and your examiner is asking you to think about the pros and cons of different government policies that might be used to deal with inflation. Let's talk about income tax. That was part of one of the bubble quiz questions that Peter was looking at a moment or two ago. So one policy the government could implement is this idea of increasing income tax. If we increase income tax, that will mean we have less disposable income. If we have less disposable income, we are going to consume less. If general demand in the economy is on the downward trajectory, if it's decreasing, there's less inflationary pressure. We would expect to see prices start to fall, or at least price rises to become a lot more stable. So what I would like you to do really quickly, if you could, is can you tell me an advantage and a disadvantage of that policy? So if tomorrow Jeremy Hunt says, right, in order to combat inflation a little bit further, I'm going to increase income tax. And by the way, I don't think he will. There's nothing that indicates that that's what he's going to do. And it would be an incredible turnaround if he was. But let's imagine for a second that was a policy that was being promoted. If we increased income tax, the primary purpose being to try and control prices, can you give me an advantage or a disadvantage? So I'm going to wait a few moments, a little bit more to type if you're going to give us something in the chat window there. I'll wait 1 or 2 moments more, then we'll go through the answers. So Abbas has come in. A disadvantage, I think Abbas is saying, lower standard of living as people have less money. Yes, Abbas, that is going to be very similar to one of our answers in a moment. Why is that not such a good thing? If you could expand that a little bit one for me and take that further as you would in the exam and explain why that might be a negative thing, that would be really good. Anybody else got something they want to add in there as either an advantage or a disadvantage? I'll give you a few moments more, just keeping an eye on the time because we're nearly out of time. YW has come in with more government tax revenue. So that's a positive. It is a positive. Now, again, in your exam, you could talk about then what you would be doing with that extra tax revenue. What would the government want to do with that tax revenue? Bringing in more money is a positive thing, but what would they do with it? Perhaps they might reduce the level of debt that the country's in. Perhaps they might use it more on public spending and public services. Great guys coming with something. Lower tax could reduce disposable income. I think you mean higher tax could reduce disposable income, but also maintain value of money, which also prevents a lower disposable income. I think I get what you mean there, great guy. Yes, you're sort of like going around a little bit. Abbas has come back again. Is it because the demand falls, producers may have lower revenue? They will have lower revenue, and that then will probably give them an incentive to reduce prices. Thank you, Abbas. Thanks to everybody who's given us some suggestions there. Let's have a quick look at what we've got. Let's put them up on screen for you there. Just thinking about the advantages so far. Less disposable income, this is I think where Abbas was going, leads to a fall in consumer demand, reducing demand pull inflationary pressure. So I'm stating an obvious point with that. The bottom of those two on there, that's an increase in income tax should lead to lower inflation. But why? That's the point I'm getting across there. And the reason why, just as you've been saying in the chat window, is lower disposable income means a drop in consumer demand. The second one there is an interesting one for you. If you're looking at getting a really good grade in your GCSE economics and you're doing some sort of analysis, sometimes it's worth talking about the level of impact of a government policy. And there's no getting away from it. If the government changes income tax, if government increases income tax, that impacts on a lot of people. Compare that to one or two other policies that a government might do. That will impact upon a lot of people. And therefore, it is likely to have the impact that the government wants. It's likely to be effective, even if it has disadvantages. So when we talk about disadvantages, a couple on screen for you, just having a look again. Shaman came in with something. It is quick to implement as an advantage. Thank you, Shaman. That's not one that I had there, but it's absolutely. If Jeremy Hunt increases income tax tomorrow, it will be in place by Thursday. So you're absolutely right. Well, it could be in place by Thursday. Okay, what's one of the problems then? We've got reduction in consumer demand can impact negatively on other objectives. So if we see a fall in demand, that might mean businesses have to start making people redundant, and so we may see an increase in unemployment. So it has this contradictory issue. And then also, we know that an increase in interest rates affects disproportionately those who are on lower incomes. A higher proportion of their income ends up getting lost, and they then have to make some really important decisions about what they have to do in terms of consumption. So it has a disproportionate effect. Brilliant, well done. Some fantastic answers. Absolutely brilliant stuff there. Peter, I think we've got one more very quick activity.
Yeah, very quick one. So we're now looking at saving here, okay? Obviously, inflation is driven by consumption. So we're going to think about the opposite here. Can you give me 2 reasons why people in the UK are more likely to save in 2023 compared to 2020? So this one's really testing your knowledge of a bit of contextual economics. You've got 30 seconds, please, just to think of some thoughts and jot them in the chat window. About the theme of what we've been discussing this evening. Okay, that great guy's come in with higher rates of interest, which leads to higher returns on investment, or higher returns on savings, possibly a greater reward for saving. I think you might mean that, great guy. Brilliant stuff. Thanks for that first contribution. Abbas, there are higher interest rates in 2023, so people will gain more from their savings. Good responses there, folks. Let's take a look at what we came up with. How close are we? A bit of a drum roll coming on here. Absolutely spot on. It's almost like you saw the PowerPoint in advance. I of course, no, you didn't, but well done for those 2 contributions. There's a greater return on savings in savings accounts because we know from that graph that we saw before that interest rates have gone up, and as a result, savers have been rewarded. We've also seen greater economic uncertainty. With less job security, people more so could save for a rainy day. Note also that a shift towards saving could ease pressure on price rises, bringing that inflation rate back to where it should be.
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic stuff. Listen, there have been some wonderful responses tonight, and apologies for the little bit of a lag, which meant that we couldn't see your answers as quickly as possible. Big shout out, of course, to Abbas, that great guy, YW, Marco and Shaman, who have all come in with some responses tonight. Apologies if I've missed your name and I haven't written it down there. Thank you so much for that, and thank you to everybody who's been contributing regularly over the last 6 weeks or so to these live streams. It's been really appreciated, that has. So we've come to the end of this live stream now. Quick reminder, the PowerPoint that we've been using will be available to you. Check out those little calculations again if you found those a little bit difficult, and all the other pieces of information we've given you. This has been recorded, so of course you can watch it all over again if you so wish. This is the last in our little session, the little set of live streams, but we're going to do one more before Christmas. We're going to have a festive live stream where we're going to ask all sorts of different questions about what's been going on in the UK economy and other things relating to all sorts of things in your specification. So that will be coming sometime mid-December time. So in a few weeks' time, do look out for when that is. We would love to see you there. If not, we would love to see you when we reconvene our revision-based live streams early in the new year. Until then, from Peter, from myself, by the way, I should say a big thank you to Peter for delivering tonight. A big thank you to everybody who's been involved, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye all.